I've been wanting to make a video about Pico 8 and just the whole idea of fantasy video game consoles for a while now. And then UFO 50 came out, which kicked that whole concept up to the next level. We've got a fictional game developer from the 80s with an entire staff, a deep history and game library, 3 separate console releases, and a game-wide scavenger hunt that leads you to some unexpected places. But before I get into all that, let's take a step back and look at the idea of fantasy consoles. Pico 8 is by far the most famous one, most notably used to create the prototype for Celeste, and eventually making a cameo in the full game. In fact, the creator of Pico 8, Zep, defined fantasy consoles better than I ever could, saying, "A fantasy console is like a regular console, but without the inconvenience of actual hardware." Pico 8 has everything else that makes a console. Machine specifications and display format, development tools, design culture, distribution platform, community, and playership. It's similar to a retro game emulator, but for a machine that never existed. Simple, a bunch of developer nerds combining their passion and nostalgia for the systems of their childhoods to create something that feels like it could have existed back then, but may have some modern design features and is overall more accessible. There's this almost tangible community spirit surrounding these projects, some even going so far as to make their fantasies a reality by building their own consoles. And you can find tons of helpful videos and forum posts from fellow developers if you're looking to start using one. The Pico 8 in particular has a 128 by 128 pixel display using 8x8 sprites and 16 lovely colors. These limitations were, quote, carefully chosen to be fun to work with, to encourage small but expressive designs, and to give cartridges made with Pico 8 their own particular look and feel. And I'd say that goal has been accomplished and then some. All of these games look so distinctly Pico 8 while also getting pretty creative. While playing through a bunch of titles for this video, I was constantly surprised by what all is possible. I really don't understand how, but these games, or carts as they're officially called, can be saved into a PNG format somehow. I guess they're just that small. This way they can easily be shared with anyone who wants to dig through their code and see exactly how they were made. Not to mention the fact that the Pico 8 contains all the tools necessary for coding, scoring, and creating art, all for the low price of $15 US. But if you just want to play some games, you can play them for free online, and if you're looking for a good place to start, all the ones I'm showing here are wonderful. I also just so happen to have a video about Pico 8 demakes, if you want a fresh spin on some already great games like Hollow Knight, Fez, and World of Goo. Now, during my research for this video, and before we finally get to UFO 50, I did come across another very interesting game developer by the name of Zachtronics, who, among other things, has created 2 separate fantasy consoles, the TIS-100 and the Z5 Power Lance. Starting with the first, well, I wouldn't even know that this was a game if I weren't looking at TIS-100's Steam page. Specifically, the Tessellated Intelligent Systems TIS-100 is a massively parallel computer architecture comprised of non-uniformly interconnected heterogeneous nodes. Maybe a few of you out there know what that actually means. It's not 100% for playing games, but there is a sandbox mode with a visual console that lets you create your own games within a game, and you might even uncover the mystery of who created this system and why. Apparently, you don't even need to know how to code to play this one. It's more of one big logic puzzle, but I don't know about that. For something that's a little bit more, let's say, palatable, Zachtronics later released Last Call BBS. The premise here is that the barkeep has loaded up his retro computer with a full set of puzzle games for you to download and play. How sweet of him. Essentially, 8 games to mess around with on the system, all created by the fictional Sawayama Corporation in the 90s. Now, this may be sounding a bit familiar to you if you clicked on this video for UFO 50. In this game, UFO Soft is the very real game developer, active from the years 1982 to 1989. During that time, they developed 3 iterations of the Laser X console and over 50 games. Lost to time, a group of archivists eventually uncovered a functional LX3 console in a storage unit which contained a copy of UFO 50, and the rest is history. Now we all get to experience the games of the past in one neat little package. This time we have 32 colors, 384 by 216 pixels, and a near endless supply of bangers to play through. UFO 50 is one of my favorite games to come out this year, possibly even in like the last 5 years, and even without the fantasy console, defunct game developer lore would have been a complete masterpiece. But oh boy, do things get deep. Now is the time I'd advise you to leave this video and go do some snooping for yourself if you want to try to figure out some of these mysteries, but be warned, they can get pretty obtuse. I did make a full-fledged walkthrough video on it, but what it all boils down to is a game-wide scavenger hunt, requiring players to either go to certain rooms in a game or just do some specific action, open up the console, and then find a riddle that will guide you to the next clue. Sprinkled in between these are a few metagame experiences taking you through the life of Greg Milk, a developer at UFOsoft. You eventually learn that he's been tasked with creating the UFO 50 collection as a way to preserve the company's legacy. You also get to meet a bunch of other people who have been credited on UFO 50's various games, most who would agree that the company seems to be going downhill. The community is still on the hunt for other secrets, and while there definitely could be something else to find, I think this scavenger hunt is quite impressive on its own. There's definitely a rabbit hole to go down here, so head on over to the unofficial game Discord server if you want to know more. There are other fantasy consoles out there, but I found these examples to be the most interesting, especially when they've worked their way into actual video games. I just started playing Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which seems to have a pretty cool lineup of made-up systems. I found a catalog for some games and consoles you can purchase by calling up the hotline listed in the company's ad, and I do always enjoy the whole game within a game thing. There's also this massive supercomputer, which I'm sure gets into spoiler territory, and I'm excited to see where it all leads. A very memorable puzzle game experience for sure. Now I'd like to see a fantasy console for 5th generation games. No idea how much harder it would be to implement this for 3D games, or if there's even a point when you can just, make a game. But as shown throughout this entire video, using made-up limitations can lead to some super creative projects. And that's why video games are awesome.